an all-new Dr. Phil. If you think only girls are dying to be thin, think again.
An estimated 10 million Americans are affected by eating disorders. 1 million of those are men. The stigma attached to eating disorders is profound at best for women, but it's even more so for men because it's basically seen as a women's issue. Now that causes men to be more reluctant to go seek help, and they wait later into the game before they do, which is another negative effect.
I don't like who I am. For whatever reason, I feel like I'm out of control. That's why I'm doing it.
You're in over your head in this. You know you are. And this is going to get worse before it gets better if you don't do something about it.
That's my biggest fear.
Are you willing to accept the help that's being offered?
Yes.
It's not easy.
The first time that I knew that I was gay was, I remember it perfectly. It was probably when I was 5 or 6 years old. I was outside playing in my hometown, and I was running to the end of the street by a fire hydrant, and I remember looking up at the sky. I've always had a connection with God, and I remember asking God to bring me a boyfriend. I've always been this way. There's nothing I can do to change it, and so why fight it? It was a very defining moment. I can remember the type of day it was. I remember everything about it. Growing up in North Dakota, being closeted and being gay and having these feelings, there were homophobic slurs and racial slurs and this and that and the other thing thrown in every direction all the time. And I don't think that's specific to North Dakota. I think that's pretty much everywhere. But I would say not necessarily the direct messages, but being around a culture and a society and a community that just thought of it as something, as being an outcast, being wrong, being different. But being involved in an indirect message like that constantly, I think it fosters fear more than anything. And for me, I became afraid of myself. I don't think I matured. I think I froze in time. I matured at a very slow rate, or I stopped. Because, you know, in the gay community, our first experiences with people aren't at the prom, aren't a first date, and that first kiss, that first moment in your stomach butterfly thing. We don't get to experience that at 15, 16 like most people do. We do that in our 20s. And so we're a 25-year-old man in a 15-year-old mentality and world of dating. Growing up in that society just built a sense of fear, and not a fear of I'm going to get beat up or I'm going to be assaulted or anything to that effect. It was always about what everybody else was thinking, and it just created a sense of insecurity, not being okay with who I was, and being fearful. Being in school, not being subjected to direct homophobic slurs, even though I wasn't directly most of the time had that projected at me, I was surrounded by it. So the indirect message was, even though they weren't teasing me, they were, and I internalized that quite a bit. One of the most embarrassing moments I had was, I remember being called out, asked if I was gay at one point, and to admit that or to even acknowledge that was so horrifying that that memory will never ever leave. I remember sitting in the auditorium of our school, and a kid turned and looked at me and asked me that, and I'll never forget it. For someone to be gay or to hear about it, it was a huge deal. A very huge deal. That was lots of something, that was gossip that people could really chew on. So I was involved in every sport that was offered in my hometown: basketball, football, track, hockey, baseball. And I really kept myself busy, and then 2 high school jobs as well. Just to kind of, I think, in a way to distract myself from what I was really struggling with. And for the longest time I didn't realize I was struggling with anything because it was just pushed down. When I told my mother that I was gay, I remember her sitting there, her eyes were just blank, she had a blank stare on her face, and she just shook her head. I said, okay, you know what, I'm gonna go home, feel free to call me when you're ready. She calls me later, she said, you know, TrOY, I just had to sleep. And I said, oh, okay, you had to sleep. And jokingly I said, oh, ha ha ha, was it because you wanted to not be true when you woke up? And she said yes. And I understood where she was coming from, but at the same time it really just, it dug a little bit. When my mother talked to my sister about me coming out and what her thoughts were, she said, well, Mom, it's better that he comes out and he's honest with us about it than half the men that I know that are married with kids that go out on the weekends and do things they shouldn't be doing. It's a very taboo subject, and so it's kept very shady, very casual. And I know from personal experience being out in public, you really have to censor what you do. And I don't know if that's more of an insecurity of mine or if it's more really what a person should be doing in a rural setting. You know, I didn't have my first date until I was 23 or 4. You have to almost make it, it's almost like an act. You have to make it look like your buddies when you're going to the movies, or you have to make it look like you're a friend when you're going out to eat. And when you're walking down the street or you're in a store, you have to censor the conversation to emulate something else. And I think it's terrible because you're stuck, you're locked in, and it really takes away from the authenticity that really probably would keep a relationship going because you can't see the real person. I first noticed that there was something going on probably around 18 or 19. I was in college. I remember standing in my dorm room, looking in the mirror and going, TrOY, you are absolutely disgusting. You are out of shape, you don't have any friends, you are closeted, you are alone, you've got to do something to turn your life around. And that moment, I remember I said, okay, I'm just gonna start exercising to look better, to feel better. I remember starting doing push-ups and sit-ups and crunches and running, and instead of me controlling the behavior, it eventually consumed me. It became a have to instead of a want to. But I was also getting in shape, I was toning up, and I was getting positive reinforcement. I was getting looks from people that had never looked at me before. I was getting, when I travel back home on the weekends, people were saying, wow, you're looking really good, you're looking in shape, fit, you've dropped a couple pounds, you must be doing really well. And I really like to hear that. Not only became an outlet for me that I could do to get the reassurance of others, but it became something that I could educate others on, and it was something I was good at. In a life I thought that had no purpose, people looked to me for answers, and so that fed into it as well. I remember getting up, going to bed, thinking about nothing but exercise, and what I was eating, what I was not eating, and how much I was eating. I was probably 18 or 19 when I said I needed to change, and then probably around 20 when I knew things were getting really, really bad. As time went on, I was losing weight. My attitudes and my beliefs and my general personality was really changing, and my family really started to take notice of that probably when I was about 20. They said, well, you're losing a lot of weight, we're okay with that, but are you doing it healthy? Are you in a healthy manner? Are things all right? I remember specifically going to Thanksgiving at my sister's place, and she actually looked across the room and she asked me, are you okay? You look like a Holocaust victim. It hit me, but at the same time it fed that disorder because it was something I was succeeding at. I was losing weight, I was exercising, I was eating unhealthy, low amounts of food, and I was winning. I was good at something, I had control over something, and even though I didn't connect the dots, that was the case. And it became this never-ending cycle of not eating and over-exercising and wanting attention, but in a very unhealthy manner. And I never connected that with my faith, the struggles that I was having, or with my sexuality, or with the perfectionism, or the emotional and physical abuse when I was younger, or the divorce of my parents. I never connected all that with how it was manifesting. whether it's mental illness or eating disorders or alcoholism or drug addiction, whatever it may be, it's all emotionally driven, and your emotions are tied to the way you cope with things. And so whether it's picking up the bottle or it's running on the treadmill, it comes from the same place, but I've never been able to connect, I'm really angry, or I'm really depressed, or I'm really sad, or I'm really anxious, so I need to go run, or I'm really upset at not being able to be who I am. I'm not allowed to be comfortable and to be at ease. I never connected that, with my eating disorder. I thought it was just a behavior. I wasn't okay with who I was on the inside, so I needed to change the outside. My drive in my eating disorder, I think the when you get down to the nitty-gritty, it was my faith, and it was the struggle that if I'm not good enough for God, who am I going to be good enough for? And I took that out of my body.